So, there is a topic I wanted to talk about for a while, but I just simply couldn't get to it. Either it was because we had other things to cover, or it was simply because I didn't know enough about the topic. And well, the Judgment Day finally arrived. You see, when we talk about all of Riot's games, we mention League of Legends, we mention Valorant, we mention TFT. Sometimes we forget to mention Legends of Runeterra. And we often forget to mention Wild Rift. And that's because Wild Rift simply has a slightly different audience that is playing on an entirely different device. Now the thing is, I played quite a bit of Wild Rift. On launch, I even got to Platinum. That was before they introduced Emerald. And honestly, I have to say, I had a great experience. There was a time when I preferred playing Wild Rift over League of Legends. Simply said, it was a great game. So why does it have 3 stars on Google Play Store? Well, since it has 4 stars on the Apple Store and even more everywhere else, one could assume these problems are based on the platform. Perhaps the game is just buggier on Android. And yes, from what I've gathered, that seems to be the case. One glance at the reviews and you're gonna know exactly what's happening. A few months ago it was laggy and unstable network connection. And no, it wasn't from my end. Now, with the new patch, the game is randomly crashing. After the update, I kept having to re-log in because it kept saying internet connection error. So far, have been unable to load into a single lobby. I'll be in game for 10-ish minutes and then all of a sudden my frame rate drops from 30 to 60 to 1 to 2. And then the game freezes up and I get penalized for AFKing. As you can see, a lot of these are simply tied to performance. In fact, in this regard, the latest patch might be the worst one yet. This one really seems to be causing the most crashes in Wild Rift's history. So that is partially why the rating took a hit. Though we should also mention that when it comes to MOBAs on mobile, the entire scene is ridiculously competitive. Like, remember the good old days of people comparing Dota to League of Legends, to HON, to Heroes of the Storm? It was just a fiesta talking about which MOBA is the best. Well, yeah. Imagine that, except now there are religions around each game. Just the war between Wild Rift and Mobile Legends Bang Bang is crazy. New update patch, new update error. What's wrong, Riot? Disappointed to players. Respect on players, please. As a big game developer, shame on Riot. I'm editing my reviews. I start a game and it stops at 72% loading screen and disconnect from the match. My connection is good and I can play other online games. And I punished 3-match delay penalty. I never come back to Wild Rift. Good about the things in Wild Rift is nothing. Copy game Mobile Legends is more better than Wild Rift. Signed, probably Mundo. So, what we learned here is that the new patch is unstable. But from the other reviews, you might also notice that a lot of people are complaining about skins. Specifically about how you can earn them. Which is an important point. In a free-to-play game with optional cosmetics, it is still important to let people earn the skins for free in some ways. That's how you get them hooked, that's how the player base stays healthy, and most importantly, that's how you keep the players paying for the game, playing the game. So you essentially need to give free things to the free players. Except Wild Rift did not do that enough. Which drives more and more players into purchasing skins, which would be relatively okay, if you could simply purchase the skins. Which, as you probably gathered from this, you can't. And instead you have to make sacrifices to the gods of earning calls. The gacha systems. That's right, I bet many of you didn't know that Wild Rift has a proper gacha system as part of its monetization. And I'm not talking about the occasional rolling for a really expensive prestigious skin like what we have in League. No, in Wild Rift it is a common occurrence. It is like a banner in a normal gacha game. Except here you are rolling for skins. And I really mean about half of the Wild Rift skins are locked behind a gacha system. The most infamous case of this happened very recently, where Riot released an entire calligraphy skin line where every single skin was part of a gacha system. Here you basically kept rolling until you got one of these skins at random. So if you wanted to buy a specific one, well, let's just say the players were not happy. Not only that, the monetization tactics became a bit more nefarious. To roll on this gacha machine, you need a currency that's called wild cores. And as far as I know, these are earnable through the game for free, but you get very little of them. However, with enough determination, that still means that some people are able to save up enough of them over the entire year. And so, Wild Rift had to do something against it. And so right before this event was announced, there were some big sales around the cores. Which means that people used their cores during the sales, after which Riot announced the event, and now people had to buy more cores. And if the tactic didn't work, of course they also gave you some bonuses for purchasing up to $100 worth of cores. So yes, this was not the best event Wild Rift pulled off. Or at least not for the customer. For Riot, it went pretty well. I mean, since China has to report their earnings, we can have a look at how well this did in China. So we can see that it's doing better than everyone else. And that's because this is the Chinese version, which actually has a lot more gacha in it. The global version is below it, with $7 million earned. And that is all in a single month. So, if you are doing decently enough, why would you put a gacha system into it? Well, for once, you can see how the Chinese version of the game is doing for comparison. But also, Honor of Kings is doing quite well on the market. Yeah, I think that is the golden star in the sky. Now, truth be told, the entire situation is a bit sad. Because when it comes to pure gameplay, Wild Rift is doing well. I mean, every time a new champion is revealed, I get shivers because of the MMO again. I mean, we know we are gonna fight Mordekaiser eventually, right? When we're old, like 50 years old at least. And this gives us a really cool preview of what we could see. But besides that, Wild Rift is just trying some cool things. First of all, there was the PvE Kalista event, the one that was based on canonical story where you played as Kalista and you were fighting the soldiers of the Iron Order. And of course, you also got to fight Hecarim himself. The crazy thing about that is that is the first time Riot tried to canonically tie gameplay into the story. Or rather, the story into the gameplay, because this happened in the past. And now we are getting a bit of a Hextech themed patch, which is a tie-in into Arcane, and it is all about seeing theoretical Heimerdinger's inventions, such as the T-Hex, which is an item that drops from Baron, and you just get to turn into T-Hex with its own entirely new abilities, so you essentially turn into a boss. Can you believe this is just an update to Summoner's Rift there? And on top of that, there are just a bunch of new silly events happening every week, and it honestly all works really well. So why do they ruin it with a gacha system? As a more recent example, in this latest patch, we also got the Garden Party skins, which you can either get from the gacha rolling system, where you have a chance to get a random skin from this skin line, or you can buy the skins directly in chunky bundles that are tied to other items, which are overpriced regardless. Well, again, most of this is happening because of the earning goals. You can't argue it doesn't work. And if you connect the dots, it makes sense why this is happening. Wild Rift's headquarters were recently moved to China. The mobile market is mostly focusing on China. And you know what gamers in the East do in general? Well, they do like to use a lot of money to flex their social status. We recently got a proof of that in League 2. So long story short, it works. And even though the players might complain, it keeps getting the whales whaling and it keeps earning funds. which I hope Riot is using on the MMO. Man, I should really make another MMO video. What's also crazy is that in 2023 it was reported that since its release in 2020, Wild Rift earned over $1 billion. And that is a crazy number. Which could also be why Riot is trying to do similar things in League. I mean, if the team was able to put together Swarm using napkins and prototyping in a basement somewhere, imagine what League could do after a few more gachas. But that's really where we are right now. Wild Rift is currently being plagued with unfortunate bad reviews, which come from bad performance and bad monetization. And that is while they keep pumping out the best and most frequent updates out of all of Riot's games. It is truly a blessing that is followed with a pretty pricey curse. And if we learned anything at all from all of these situations, it is that resistance is meaningless. And for the love of God, don't even try boycotting it.